Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel Tech Talks with AK. So in today's video we are going to do a mock interview with JavaScript interview questions, and this JavaScript interview questions is for freshers or junior roles. If you are looking for any role which involves JavaScript in it, and if you are preparing for JavaScript interview, this video definitely will help you. So today I have invited one of my subscribers. His name is Prashant Pokhriyal, and he is working in top multinational IT company which has office in Bangalore as well. So without wasting time, let's start interview with him. Hi Prashant.
Hi Ankit, thank you for inviting me to this interview.
From where are you joining?
I'm joining this call from Bangalore, India.
Okay, let's start interview. So tell me about yourself.
I've been working for around 4 years into the software development industry, and I did my graduation from BTech, CSC background, and it's been more than around 4+ years of experience into mostly into backend plus frontend, and I have done little bit in the DevOps side also.
So what tech stack you use for front end and back end?
When I started my career, actually I started with Laravel as a backend framework for developing the REST APIs. Front end I use AngularJS. And then over the time, I went into different technologies, React.js, JavaScript, and Node.js. Yeah, all these sort of technologies. So for backend, I'm using Node.js currently, and for the front end, I'm using React. So yeah, I would say my tech stack is JavaScript.
Okay.
So I'm more comfortable.
Okay, so let me ask JavaScript specific questions now. So what do you understand by JavaScript? What exactly is JavaScript?
Okay, so according to me, JavaScript is the most popular web scripting language used for both client and server-side development, and it supports some of the object-oriented programming functionalities also. And using JavaScript, we can run it on a browser, and we can interact with the HTML DOM, and we can do some kind of event-driven processing on a web browser.
Okay. So, do you know how many primitive data types are there in JavaScript?
Okay, so we have different kind of primitive types in JavaScript. So we have string, number, we have boolean, we have symbol, we have begin, we have undefined.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, these are the primitive.
What
types.
about null? Null is not primitive data type?
Null, yeah, null is also primitive data type. Yeah.
Okay, so there are almost 6 primitive data types in JavaScript. So,
Yeah.
so do you know differences between null and undefined?
So null, actually, what I think is undefined is being used by the JavaScript internally. So suppose a variable is being defined, you have declared the variable, but you haven't initialized the value to that variable. So in that case, the JavaScript will automatically assign a value undefined to that variable. Null seems to be more of a we explicitly define a variable as null.
Okay, so do you think null and undefined have differences basis on functions or methods as well?
Functions, methods, and also. No, I'm not sure.
Okay, so when a function, when you call a function which doesn't return anything, what it returns actually?
Okay, so it will return undefined.
Yeah. So a function which is not returning anything, that returns undefined.
Yeah, right.
So, but null is return value. If you want to return null, you have to specify null as a return type.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Good. Moving to next question. So, do you know anything about logical and logical OR operator in JavaScript?
Okay, so the logical AND operator finds the first false condition and returns it. If it does not find any false condition, then it will. So whatever will be the last operand that we have used, it will return the value of that operand.
Okay. Okay. What about logical OR operator?
So the logical operator finds the first true value and then it returns it.
Okay, Prashant, can you write a few example here on replicate.com I shared with you?
Okay. So I'll write the end condition. I'll print its value. So it's true and 10. So this condition will return 10 and this is my and this condition will also return 10.
Okay, so in first line, like console.log true and 10, because first expression is true, so it will return 10, right?
Right.
Okay. And in OR condition, first expression is false, so it should also return the 10 because it returns first true the expression from the statement.
Right.
Okay, so let me run this code and test it. Right, so first is coming 10 and second is also coming 10. So what if you make first condition of AND false? Can you write? Yeah.
Yeah, so if I like make this condition of false, so in that case it will return false. Yeah, because the end condition is getting terminated to the very first step, so it will not go to the next step, so it will return false.
Okay. And can you write one different example for OR also?
Yeah, so I can take one more example. So if I make this condition as true and then I use 10, so now this will return me true because in our logic operation we got true in the very first operand, so it will return from there and it will not move for the next expressions.
Okay, so let me just run this code and see what happens. Right, so first end condition is returning false because first operand of the expression is false.
Correct.
And this line of code is returning 10 because first condition is false and it returns first truth expression from the operands.
Right.
And this is another example of or logical operator because it returns first truth expression, so it will return true from this condition.
Right.
Okay, Prashant. So coming back to our questions. So our next question is, do you know what is the fastest way of converting string to number?
A string to a number. So I believe we can use the plus sign in front of a string and it will get converted into a integer.
Why do you think it is the fastest way? Means there are many other operations or there are other methods also for typecasting number to a string to a number. So why do you think using plus operand will make it fastest way of converting string to number?
Because like if we use plus as an operand in front of the string, it actually does not perform any kind of operation on that value. So no CPU cycle is going to execute on that particular the syntax or the statement that we have written, and it will already return a number if the string contains a number.
Right. Okay, Prashant. So my next question is about error names. Do you know how many type of error names there are in JavaScript?
Yeah, we have range error, reference error, syntax error, type error. These type errors I know.
Okay, so can you explain when syntax error happens? Can you give any conditions?
So syntax error, like whenever like we are using any kind of error in the syntax. Suppose I miss close parenthesis of a function, or if I miss a curly braces. So in that case, the syntax error comes.
Okay. Can you give any example of syntax error when it occurs?
Syntax error, so whenever I'm using a function, just for example, like if I'm using a function and then I miss the opening bracket of the function, then I'll get the syntax error.
Okay. So just now you mentioned functions. So you are aware of functions.
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay. So do you know what is self-invoking function?
Self-invoking function is a function in which, like, we need not to call the function explicitly. We kind of enclose it in an enclosed manner, and then with the definition of the function, it gets executed.
Okay. Can you write an example? So let me clean this old sheet and you can write here.
Okay. Okay. So I'll start.
Okay.
So my self-invoking function. So firstly, I'll write the function, and then I'll convert it into a self-invoking function.
Okay.
So this is my function, and if I want to make it a self-invoking function, then I have to wrap it in a closure. So I'll just close it, and then I'll call it, and I'll pass 1, 2, 3. So this is my self-invoking function.
So if I run this function or if I run this code, it will call some function without invoking this function exactly, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I'm running it and let's see whether it returns 3 or not. Yes, it is returning 3. This is self-invoking function. So do you think this function is also an anonymous function?
Uh, so this function, I wouldn't say that it's an anonymous function because a name has been given to this function. So if I just remove this name, then it will act as an anonymous function now.
Okay, so anonymous function is also a type of self-invoking functions without name, right?
Right.
Okay. So can you assign this self-invoking functions to a variable?
Yeah, I can do it. So you mean I have to?
So I mean like any function you can assign to a variable also, right? So if you write let a is equal to some function
Mhm.
and this function has some definition and some parameters. So can you do similar thing with the anonymous function?
So like if this is my function, yeah. So I'll just update this code, whatever you have written. So I'll just write and so now I have assigned this anonymous function to a new variable, some function.
Okay, so whenever we will call this some variable, it will get the value from this anonymous function, which is actually sum of a and b.
Yeah. So now I can like I would say it is kind of I have created a replica of this function and stored it in another function, and I can use this variable to call the function. So it will have now the functional functionality that we have assigned. So if I write 1 and 2, and then if I print it in a log, so it will.
Why are you writing print statement again? This function is already has console log a plus b.
Okay, yeah, right. So 1 second. So I'll just change this one. Instead of printing, I'll return a plus b,
Okay.
and then yeah,
So now if you run it, it will return 3, right?
yeah, right.
Right. Okay. Okay, Prashant. So now let's move to some front-end specific questions. Like, do you know what is the DOM?
Yeah. So um, so DOM is a like JavaScript object, which is kind of a data structure for our HTML DOM. So it contains a tree-like structure in JavaScript object model, so that if I want to like do any kind of interaction with my HTML code, I can use the DOM to interact with my HTML content.
So how basically you use DOM to modify HTML using JavaScript? So there are any specific kind of objects or attributes or properties in DOM which you can use?
Yeah, so like in a top level, we have a hierarchy in this DOM. So firstly, the window is the main object, which has which is the root of the DOM. Then we have document, and then in each in document, then we can access any kind of tag, HTML tag that we want to use. Like if I want to change the style of a body, so I can use document.body.style and .background color. Anything I can assign it to.
Okay. So what are attributes in DOM and how they are different from properties of JavaScript?
So attributes actually both are, I would say, are same, but they are being used in different contexts. So attributes, I would say, when we deal with the HTML content. So whatever the attributes that we have used in a particular tag. So suppose on a body tag, I have used class, name, ID. So these are the attributes of that body tag element.
Okay.
But if I am accessing those attributes in my vanilla JavaScript, so then those attributes will become properties. So it depends on the context how aware I am using those things.
So Prashant, can you tell me how I can perform any action, or if I want to change color of a button or a text, how can I do using HTML DOM and JavaScript?
Yeah, so in DOM actually we have functionality to listen for the events being triggered by the web browser. So suppose I want to change the color of a div based on the mouse click event. So I can listen on that event in my vanilla JavaScript, and then I can use the DOM property of style to change the color of the particular div.
Okay. So just now you mentioned event. So do
Yeah.
you know how event propagate from window to target or target to window? I mean what is event propagation in terms of a click event?
Okay. So event propagation. So what does it mean basically? So how like this whole event triggering works? So if I am clicking on a particular element, so it will trigger an event. So suppose I am clicking on an event, so click event is being triggered, and that click event will get triggered all towards the root of the DOM, which is window. So it will propagate to its parent, and then to its parent till the window. So this is like event propagation that happens.
Okay. So what is event bubbling? How it is different from event propagation?
So event propagation basically, so bubbling is a part of event propagation. So if the event is happening from window to target or target to window, we call it as a event propagation. But if the event is being transferred from target to window, it is known as event bubbling.
Okay. So it means bubbling is a part of event propagation, which is always from target to window.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So if you want to stop event propagation, how to stop a event propagation of any event or any button click?
Okay. So like if I want to stop propagation being bubbled to upper stages, so I can use the prevent default.
Are you sure? So
Sorry.
do you know there is a method called event stop propagation, event.stop propagation?
Yeah. We can use stop propagation also.
So
For stopping.
what is the difference between event.preventDefault and event.stop propagation?
So prevent default, what it does, it prevents the default functionality of a particular DOM event. For example, suppose form has a default functionality of triggering an event called submit, and button has a default probability of click event.
Okay.
So event.prevent default will prevent the default functionality of a particular DOM. But in stop propagation, it doesn't matter whether it is a default event that is being triggered or it's a custom made event that is being triggered. It will stop the propagation right away from public.
Okay, so you mean we can interchangeably use event.preventDefault and event.stopPropagation?
Interchangeably, yeah, we can use it. So I would say event.stopPropagation is a superset, and it contains the default logic of prevent default also. But in some case, like if you are going to use prevent default and you have added some kind of custom event to that form or to any button, so it will not stop the propagation.
Okay, so it will default on it. It will stop only default event.
Yeah, right. Default behavior. Yeah.
Okay. So in your code, how would you check whether event.preventDefault has been called or not? Means has been used or not on any element.
Mm, no, I'm not sure on it.
So if you want to check whether prevent default method has been used in any object or method, you can use event object for that. There is a property called default prevented. It is a boolean type property. If you write event.default prevented, if it returns true, it means default prevent method has been used in your method. So
Okay.
that's how you can get to know whether prevent default method is used or not.
Okay.
Okay, so moving to next question. So Prashant, can you tell me how many ways are there to create an array? So it's better to give example.
Okay. So there are basically three types of ways in JavaScript using which we can create an array. So one is like creating using instance of an array. The other one is using the constructor of the array constructor, and the third one is using the array literal into it.
Okay, so can you write a few examples or at least one example for each?
Okay, sure. So I'll just remove this one.
Yep.
Okay. So this is like one. So this one, the first that I've written is being used by using a instance of the array.
So this method will create empty array, right?
Yeah, right. So it will create the empty array, but it will not initialize the values.
Okay.
Or it will not call the copy constructor. And another one is using constructor. This is my and the third one is by using array literal. Yeah, using these three ways.
Okay, so if I run this code, do you think it will create three arrays?
Yeah, it will create three arrays.
Or it will give some syntax error?
No, it will not give any syntax error.
Okay.
It will create three arrays.
So I'm running it. And there is a reference error. So you have referenced array to a wrong class. You have to use array here.
Okay.
So when I run it again, it creates three array, but it's not printing because you have not printed console log out these arrays.
Right.
Let me write console log for this.
Okay.
So it has printed three arrays. One is empty array, which is created using instance, and other one is array constructor and array literal. Okay, so now if I want you to empty this array, how many ways you can think of to empty this array or array literal here?
So one way is like directly assigning that variable to an empty array.
Okay, can you keep writing your
Okay.
answers also here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'll remove this code.
Don't remove everything. Let this array be here so that we can test it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
I'll just
remove these console logs and you can write here.
okay. So one way is like this array constructor. If I want to empty it, I can directly use this, and then also suppose if I want to empty this array literal, I can set the value of length property to 0. It will empty the array,
Okay.
and I can use splice method also. So let me create one more array. And so if I use new array dot splice, and then I can splice it from the initial new array dot length. So it will splice the whole array.
Okay. So you are saying there are 3 ways to empty an array. Is Can you use pop method also, like stacks pop method to empty an array?
Yeah, pop we can use it, but the reason would be then we have to use a loop in that case. But we can do it. So we can suppose I have another array, and then I can write a while loop, and while if length is greater than 0, then till then keep popping out the array. So this way also we can do it. So here we can use array pop, and we can also use shift method also, array shift.
Okay.
No, array shift will not delete it. It will just return the value. So no, we can't use it. So it will be only array pop.
Okay. So all these methods will remove every element from array, right?
Right.
Okay. So if I want you to remove only duplicates from an array, how would you do it? That.
So for duplicate, uh, so one way is simply like one naive approach would be
Let's clear this junk and
uh,
can you clear this? Okay.
yeah.
So you can define arrays and then use different ways to remove duplicates from it.
Okay. So suppose this is my array, and it has one. What I can do, I can use filter method. So and then I need to check. I'll get the number. I'll get the index of the current number, and then I'll check if array dot index of this number is not equal to index, then return the number.
So in this line, do you think this array will always be updated after running this line?
No, it will not update the existing array. It will return the new updated array, but it will not alter the existing array.
Okay. So can you console your filtered array here?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just console log my filtered array, and I'll console original array also.
Okay, so let me run this code and see what happens. So this piece of logic is returning actually array which is 1 and 4.
Yeah, which is duplicate. So ideally, it instead of not equal to, it should be equal to. Let me run it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. So this is one way of removing duplicates from an array. So do you know any other way to remove duplicates from array?
We can use set also for these type of things. Suppose this is my set, and I'll pass this array inside this set. I can use console.log_set.
Okay, so let's just remove these two console statements. So now this console log should print filtered array using set, right?
Yeah. So it's actually printing the set object.
Yeah, it's printing the set object. It's not actually array. So you have to get array from this set object.
Okay, so I can typecast it using array.from, and then I can pass the set method here, set object, and then it will return converted array.
Okay, so let's rerun it again. Right, so it is returning array without duplicates.
Right.
So is there any other way also? Can you remember any other way?
So one other way would be like using the naive approach. So in that case, what we can do, we can keep a hash map, and in that hash map, we will check whether the value is already being traced in the array or not. If it is already traced, then we'll simply print it. If it is not being traced, then we will print it. Otherwise, we'll skip that particular element.
Okay. So one more question on array. How do you check whether a value is array or not?
A value is array or not.
For example, this is a array. Its variable name is array, so you can say it's a array. So for example, let's say this variable name is not array and it has a, b, and this value is not assigned here. It's not initialized here. It's coming dynamically from somewhere else, and you don't know the type of that value. So how would you check whether AB is type of array or not?
Okay. So we can use isArray method of array class, and we can write like in this way. So array dot isArray, and we can pass the array. So whatever, like we can pass a variable. So in this case, AB. So it will check whether whatever the value we have passed to this isArray method, whether it is array or not.
Okay, so let me clear this junk first and run it again. So if I run it again, it should return true, right? If we console log it out, it should print true.
Right.
Okay, so what if I do is array null? What it will return? Is array null or null is array or not?
Null will return false.
Why?
Because null is not of type array. It is of type null. It has its own type.
Okay. Right. Okay, so let's move to next questions. So what are prototypes in JavaScript?
Prototypes are basically used for extending the object-oriented paradigm in JavaScript. So using prototype, we can kind of extend the functionality of an object.
So can you write down an example for extending a functionality or a method in using prototype on JavaScript?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll write on the Reddit.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So
You can clear this piece of code first.
okay. So I'll create a function user
Is this function or function constructor?
function constructor. Then I'll use the name. By default, I would write on. This I would write good. And using the prototype, I can add a method. So I would write complete address and this I think this is it.
Okay, so can you console your user?
Okay. So what I'll do, I'll call this method. So let me take one my own user.
Can you console log out Prashant before updating address?
Okay. So what it will do, it will firstly print the default value that I have assigned during the definition phase, John and Bangor. And then I have extended the functionality by using the prototype, and I added a method update address to this object.
Okay.
And then I'm using that address, that method to update the address of that object.
Okay, so if we run it now, first of all, it will have address Bangalore, then Delhi, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm running it. Great. So it printed first object user with address Bangalore and second object user with address Delhi.
Yeah.
Okay. You are using let and where keyword interchangeably in your code. So do you know what is the difference between let, where and const?
Yeah. So where is being used in old, I would say, JavaScript. So this let and const, these two literals are being introduced in EMCA 6 standard. And so the basic difference is in terms of the scoping. So where has a, I would say, functional scope, and let has a block level scope. So what does it mean if I like define a variable inside a block scope, in a block scope using a where? So the actual definition will be outside of the block.
Okay.
And so I can access that variable like outside of the block also. But if I define it using let, I will get the reference error that this variable is not accessible and it does not have any reference. So I'll just take an example. Can I delete this one?
Yeah, sure.
So suppose this is my function ABC and it has one if true, and then I'm using where a equal to ABC. Hello. Okay. And if I print this variable here, so it will get print. It will print hello, because this where is so this is my block. But what will happen at the time of execution, that this definition will be accessible throughout this function, because where has a functional scope. So
Okay.
whichever is the nearest function to this where, the definition will go to that function. And if the same thing I write it down but using let, so now the scope of this A is only to this block. So I won't be able to access it outside it, and I'll get a syntax reference error for this.
Okay, so this.
And yeah.
Okay, so this is the difference between scope of where and let.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just mentioned function scope and block scope. So do you know what is the differences between function scope and block scope?
Yeah, so functional scope is basically the scope between like whatever the function definition we have written. So all the variables, whatever we have defined in that function, those will be accessible only to that functional scope. So at the time of compiling phase, so what happens? It creates a lexical environment, the JavaScript compiler, and it will assign the values to that particular function at the time of lexical environment. And block scope are like, suppose this is my block scope. If is a block scope for, and so whatever is between these curly braces, even like without writing any expression, if I just write down this is also a block scope.
Okay, so whatever you define inside this block, it will be accessible only inside this block.
Right.
Okay. So if you define where here, but it has function scope, it will be accessible out of this block also inside this function, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, Prashant. You while coding you use this keyword, like when you were assigning address to Prashant's user using this dot address. So do you know what is this actually in JavaScript and what is the purpose of this in JavaScript?
Yeah, so this keyword actually it has a different context depending on the situation. So if I'm using this inside a method, so it refers to the owner's object, and if I'm using it inside a function, so it refers to the global object.
Okay. Okay. Last question from my side, Prashant. So do you know difference between the double equal and triple equal in JavaScript?
Yeah, so the basic difference between these two equality is that the triple equal to checks for the type also, and double equal to does not check for the type. So they might be like, suppose if I'm so double equal to what it does, it do the auto type conversion also. So suppose if I'm converting a string with a number, and a string contain the same number,
Okay.
so the double equal to will return true, but the triple equal to will return false because it has different type.
Okay. That's all, Prashant, from my side. Thanks for joining this video interview.
Thank you, Ankit, for taking this session, and I feel it will help a lot to the fresher who are just graduated from the college and looking out for a JavaScript developer role.
Yeah, definitely it will help a lot who are actually looking for job. Thank you, Prashant, for taking your time. Thanks.
Sure.
Bye.
Okay, bye. See you.
So that was the interview with Prashant Pokhriyal. Hope you liked it. If you find it useful, please like this, share with your friends who might find it useful, and don't forget to subscribe to get notified about more technical interesting videos from Tech Talks with AK. If you have any feedback, any suggestion, or any question, please write down below in the comment box so that I can improve my next video. Thank you.